Today, I'm excited to have Shannon Wolfe joining us. Shannon has been with the Maryland Forest Service for about 30 years, I think over 30 years now. He started as a forest technician with Forest Service right out of college. He went to Allegheny College here in Maryland. He was a technician for the Forest Service for St. Mary's in Charles County. So he hails from Western Maryland. He grew up out west and worked a lot in Southern Maryland. He then a few years ago joined the fire staff as a wildfire coordinator and a fire manager. And before his current position, he was managing the western and southern regions for prescribed fire. And now he is shifted his role. He got a promotion, and now he is shifted to Southern Maryland and the Eastern Maryland region. So he now covers the Eastern Shore, where I know a lot of our attendees are from and living. Um, he was excited to move and transition. He loves Western Maryland, but he was excited to add Eastern Maryland to his plate because he said he fishing in the ocean and bay and hunting on the shore were two things that make him tick, and he was looking forward to really getting outdoors in the Eastern Shore more. So that's a little background on Shannon, and you'll probably get a little bit more insight into him as we get going here and hear his talk. Um, so here's all the links and everything. I'm gonna throw this into the chat, so you don't have to write any of this down now. But if you know anybody, if you're not on my email list, you can sign up now. I have an online course that's new, but I'm getting more information. Would love anybody to join into that. It's free. You just log into the school.com and can access a few videos and a chat function. Of course, our YouTube channel. I post on X and Twitter as well as LinkedIn, as well on the social media fronts. Go ahead. I'm
Okay.
gonna.
Thanks for the introduction, Luke. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on and putting this together. Uh, Prescribed burning as a whole is becoming very popular. Um, Me being on fire staff for the last 5 years, I've been able to watch the trend of prescribed burning statewide, and it has increased significantly each year, and this year is no exception. So far this year, just for southern and eastern region, for I've been accepting burn plants since January 1, and we're looking at about 11,500 acres between the two regions having burn plans already submitted, and I'm sure that number will go up as we move through and get closer to spring burn season, and then continue through summer and then fall burning season. So people are realizing the benefit of prescribed burning. They're using it more as a management tool for wildlife and habitat and forest management. Um, and and today is important to kind of talk about the planning process of prescribed burning to make sure that folks have the base knowledge of kind of what you need to go into it for planning. And why do we plan? Um, Dealing with prescribed fire is inherently risky. There's liability involved. There's a lot of safety considerations. It's important that the proper planning and training and base knowledge that you need going into it, that you're set up for success of meeting your burn objectives and conducting it safely. You need to make sure that we're all responsible for what we're doing. And whenever you're putting fire on the ground, you're inevitably, whether you're federal, state, or private or non-governmental organization, you're responsible for the fire that you put on the ground. So a lot of planning needs to go into it, a lot of education and a lot of experience. So kind of what I really want to talk about today is the prescribed burn plan. With the amount of time that we have, I want to go through it. It's timely with burn season coming up, and it's also timely in that we just adopted a new prescribed burn plan format that kind of update things a little bit with new technologies and new formatting and things like that. It was due for an overhaul, and now we have a product that moving forward we can build on, but is really looking pretty good as a whole. So I'll start going through the burn plan. First of all, when do you need a burn plan? If you're legally, if you're going to do prescribed burning, you need to submit a burn plan to the state, to the Department of Natural Resources, Forest Service, for the burning that you're going to do. And then after the burn plan, you would need to have a burning permit from the Forest Service as well. So so there's a legal requirement to have a burn plan, and then this format is the minimum standard, meaning that your burn plan doesn't have to be this burn plan. You can use whatever burn plan you have, or whatever format. It just needs to have at least all these elements in the plan to be approved. So just moving down the list, top to bottom on the plan, there's a burn plan number. Each burn plan gets a number. It's recorded in our system. It can be referenced and brought back up, and the document is then filed as an official burn plan. You want to have who prepared the burn plan, and who it was submitted by. And then the approval process. Once I receive a burn plan and approve it, I'll sign off on it and then return it. First part here is just an acknowledgement that if you're burning within an environmentally sensitive area designation, an ESA management area, that you have got the approval that you need to burn in those areas. And to get approval for burning in those areas, that has to go through the Wildlife and Heritage Service, and the person that you're going to want to deal with that would be Jason Harrison with the Wildlife and Heritage Service. I'm sure if you need that contact, Luke can provide it, or myself. My contact information, I'm sure, will be attached. You can contact me. So basically, this is just checking that you realize that if there is or is not an ESA. If there's not, there's no approval required. You just check that box and move on. If there is, you need to check the box that you have the approval and it's been reviewed and signed off on. And then further down, we're just looking at the location of the burn, what region it's in, what county it's in, the ownership type. And this is a burn plan that has already been submitted. It was in pretty good format, so I'm just using it as an example. But essentially, they're just drop down boxes for ownership: local, state, private, federal. Federal agencies don't need to go through the Forest Service for approval. They have their own burn plan and approval process that's pretty stringent and very comprehensive. Just property owner information. So, for this one, it's the property was owned by Calvert County. Yours might be, if you're the landowner, it'd be your information. If it was state, it'd be the Department of Natural Resources, and then the agency that manages it, and then just typical contact information. And then moving down, land manager. If you were a landowner and had somebody managing your property for you, that would go in here. For DNR, it would be the person that is managing that particular property. And then the property location, as accurately as possible. We want to know where the property is that you're going to be burning on. Property lat and long is just the coordinate system that we need to kind of know where you're burning. It's used in various places after the burn for reporting. This format is decimal degree format, which means it's not degrees, minutes, and seconds. It's decimal degree. If you have trouble finding that, if you just open up Google Maps and click on the property, the lat and long will come up at the bottom of that, and it will be in decimal degree for you. That's a good place to get that. And then the purpose and objective. So we want to know, and you want to know what is the purpose of your burn for this particular one. There may be more than one purpose. This one, hazard fuel reduction, invasive species control, and warm season grass maintenance. So this is some fields that are warm season grass, and part of the management is to burn those on rotation to keep the successional stage and grass management. So that's part of that. And then we have another spot down here. If we haven't captured the purpose and you have another purpose, you can list it there. On this one, you can see they listed training. as another purpose. The burn objective. So for the burn objective, we want to know what specifically are you trying to accomplish with the burn. And for objectives, we like for them to be, the acronym is a SMART objective. So they need to be specific, they need to be measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So this one is for relatively low complexity burn where they're trying to burn maintain warm season grass. So this one specifically maintain warm season grass habitat, remove woody and other undesirable species with prescribed fire. They want to consume 100% of the dormant herbaceous vegetation and kill 85% of the woody vegetation. So that's the main objective. That's what they're trying to accomplish here. So then we go down to describing the burn units. And this particular property has several different burn units in it. So it's not just one field that they're trying to burn it, and this particular one, that it's what they're looking at, different fields, so different burn units. And then we want to know how many acres are in each burn unit, and then what the fuel model is. And these are all drop down boxes. If you click on them, they drop down and populate. And you see this one gives you the opportunity to enter the fuel models. There's two different accepted standards for fuel model. There's Howe Anderson's original 13, which are the first 13 there, and they're just fine to use if they represent what you're burning. Those have been updated, and the Scott Bergen 40 fuel models are listed below that go into this. And those are listed there for you to select. And if you're having trouble selecting a fuel model for this one, they've selected GR5. A lot of people also for warm season grass will use fuel model 3, which is tall grass specifically. There is training that is available to everybody to take from the National Wildland Fire Coordination Group, online, self-registering and self-paced training that you can take on different fuel models and selecting them. And then we just want to know, what the slope is for the area that you're burning, what the aspect is, and then percentage of the overall burn. So within one field, if you had really short grass and then tall grass, you might use two different fuel models. You may use a fuel model 1 for the really short grass and then a fuel model 3 for the tall grass. And then we would want to know the percentage of that overall burn unit. So, but since these are single fuel models for each burn unit, it's 100%. So, and this is set up so that you can just keep adding them until you have them all listed. And then we want to know what's adjacent to the burn. So adjacent to this one, timber litter 2, low broadleaf litter, which is just typical woodland fuel type. And that's all they have listed on this. The next part is the parameters that you're going to burn in. And in a lot of cases, this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the burn plan. It requires a lot of knowledge and experience to kind of pick your window, to pick your prescription for each one of these. And I'll just kind of run down the list for this one. Wind direction, when we talk about wind direction, we're talking that the direction from which the wind is blowing from. And you see we have a preferred, a minimum, and a maximum. So the preferred is really the burn window that you're looking to burn in. That's the prescription that you want. The minimum, if you started burning and your forecast had you in your preferred, but you start to drop down below your preferred into your minimum, you can still continue to burn, but you know that's not the window that you would want to be going for. So it's still acceptable to continue to burn within these minimums and maximums, but you're really looking to select the preferred as the forecast for what you're going to burn for that particular day. So wind speed, you can see that this says eye level. Wind speeds are forecasted a lot of different ways. Generally, with like the National Weather Service, you'll get the 20-foot winds. And there is a conversion tool on the National Weather Service forecast website that you can convert to eye level winds. But here we're looking at what are the winds at eye level or mid plane. So these are first, so 2 to 6 miles an hour with a maximum of 10 and a minimum of 1. Temperature, obviously, from the forecast temperature, with this, the maximum and the minimum, I'll say on the minimum on temperature, the one thing you want to look out for is whenever things start to freeze up. If you're using UTVs with water or engines or whatever for support and you get below freezing, they may not be beneficial to use when you get below freezing. So usually try to keep most prescribed burning, above that freezing point. Humidity, as the percent humidity from the forecast, preferred, minimum, maximum, days since last measurable precipitation. And here we want to know basically how many days out since we've got significant rainfall are you willing to burn. The further out you go, the drier it gets, the more chances that you could have spotting or slop overs or problems. So we want to try to have knowledge of what range you're looking to burn there. The drought index is an overall index of drought itself. Soil moisture, it's the KBDI, Keach-Brom Drought Index that we're looking for here. The maximum you'd be looking at is 400, and then the ideal range between 100 and 300 on this burn. Fine dead fuel moisture. And when we talk about fine dead fuel moisture, that's really the moisture that's in the fuel that you're going to burn. This is the surface fuels. This is what's going to, in most cases, carry the fire. So you're looking at needles, leaves, grass, herbaceous vegetation, whatever fuel in that 1 hour time lag fine dead fuel moisture group is carrying that fire. That's what we're looking at here. And how do you derive the fine dead fuel moisture? All these parameters, or most of these parameters up here, go into the calculation process that calculates this fine dead fuel moisture. So temperature, humidity, time of year, it all kind of works together to affect how much moisture a fuel has. And of course, 1 hour fuel moistures are light and flashy, so they take on moisture really quick. They lose moisture really quick. So they vary quite a bit just based off of temperature, humidity. And then 10 an hour, 10 hour and 100 hour fuel moistures. This is 10 hours going to be like your branches and larger fuels, and then 100 hour you're looking at your larger branch woods, maybe small logs, things like that. And we want to know what the fuel moisture is in there. If you're burning in a fuel model 3 grass, and it's all fuel model 3, you're not going to have any 10 and 100 hour fuels in there possibly. So for that, this could be not applicable. Rule of thumb for calculating the 10 and 100 hour fuels in this area, once you have the 1 hour fuels, you can add 2% to get the 10, and then 2% again to get the 100 hour. Mixing height, very important. This has to do with smoke management, and what we're looking at here is the smoke that you create with a prescribed burn, is it going to lift and disperse into the atmosphere? Our minimum that we'll accept would be 1700. So this number is kind of pre-filled as the minimum, and won't accept burn plans for anything with less than 1700 feet mixing height. And then, the ideal and then maximum. Live fuel moisture, if your burn has a live component of fuels in it, you're going to want to list that. In this fuel type that he used of GR5, there may be a demand for that in a grass fuel, but typically in a fuel model 3, you're looking at mostly cured grass. So there is no live fuel moisture, but typically live fuel moistures are kind of calculated from trends early in the season during green up. Things are really high live fuel moisture contents, upwards of 300%. As you go through the summer, things will start to trend down to 150, down to 100. And then when things become dormant, once you get below 30%, you're not at a live fuel moisture anymore. That's a dead fuel moisture. So dead fuels will hold between 0 and 30%, and live usually from about 30 to up to 300-ish.
Shannon,
And then if you have another step,
Shane,
I'm
you mind
sorry,
if I jump
question?
in with a couple of questions
Yep.
here? We've
Nope.
got a couple in
Go
the
ahead.
chat. I've got some myself here.
Yep.
We're, as you know, we're, and I didn't mention this to the audience yet, but we're planning a prescribed burn workshop on, I think, March 27th with a backup date of April 3rd. And we're filling out this form right now. I've got a tech working on this. And how will we know what are appropriate numbers to put in here? Are these numbers kind of good starting points in terms of temperature, preferred minimum and maximum for spring burns? And also how much, yeah, how accurate should we do? Are these good starting points? And then you had mentioned some of these fields come from calculations of the temperature and humidity. Are those formulas available? Do we need to fill that out, or should we just fill out a couple of them and then like the Forest Service would calculate the others?
So if you're preparing a burn plan and you didn't have any knowledge of what the parameters are or should be, at that point, first you kind of need to get some education and experience. So you want to try to get some basic fire behavior experience. And again, the National Wildland Fire Coordination Group has some good classes. S190 is a good one that's basic fire behavior, and gives you kind of a base knowledge. It's self-paced, self-enrolled, doesn't cost anything, and available through NWCG. And then the workshop that you talked about, if you're going to be a burn boss and preparing burn plans, there is a stipulation that as a burn boss, you need to have attended at least a 2-day workshop, and then have 3 years of experience burning. So you need to have a good working concrete base foundation knowledge of what these numbers mean and why they're there. If from a landowner standpoint, if they're trying to burn and the complexity's low, and they have the workshop and the experience to kind of do that, they can also work with the folks in the field offices and with the Forest Service and reach out to those. And I highly recommend that. They can help you with these numbers and prescriptions, and they have a lot of training and experience to kind of go off of to help you with that. But this is a very basic prescription for Fuel Model 3 for a warm season grass burn in the spring.
And for landowners who don't have that experience yet, or they're kind of in that new phase, I would count myself possibly able to qualify as a burn boss. I think I've probably got enough. I've certified, I've gone through the classes and have attended burns over the years. But for those who haven't, or who are just new, will Forest Service serve as a burn boss if they want to hold up for a private landowner, for example, who wants to get a burn? Would Forest Service act as a burn boss, or do they need to hire one?
So on private land, if they're working with maybe NRCS or the Wildlife Service with Department of Natural Resources, there are circumstances where the department will come out and conduct the burn for the landowner. There may be fees involved with it. There's a prescribed burn agreement involved with it that goes into it. For the Forest Service, if you have a forest management plan and you're a landowner that we've worked with in the management of that, you can contract us to come in and do the burning. Outside of the Forest Service, there are contractors that will do the burn for you. And as a Forest Service, we have to be very responsible with who we're allowing to burn and under what conditions and under what knowledge and experience that they have doing it. But we're very helpful in trying to get someone to that point if that's where they want to be and they want to conduct those burns. We'll work with them. Like I said, that county contact with the Forest Service, Forestry Field Office, very important.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. And then moving down the smoke management planning of the prescribed burning. We want to know, you want to identify what smoke sensitive targets are within a mile of the burn. So if you have a field that you're burning, and then on the west side of the burn there's immediately a house right there adjacent to it, then you would want to, that's a smoke sensitive target that we want to avoid smoking out. If there's a road, some other target there that we don't want to smoke out, we want that listed here in this 1 mile. 5 mile smoke target, again, moving out from the 1 mile to the 5 mile. This becomes more important with your heavier fuels. If you're doing an understory burn, you're not burning grass where it's flashy, where it burns, it puts up smoke, and then it burns itself out and quits smoking. If you're doing something that has a lot of residual smoke, we really want to look at, what is within the 5 miles of where you're burning, to make sure if there was, airport or hospital or school or something of that nature, we'd want to identify that and mitigate, not impacting it. Mitigations in place to minimize the smoke. A lot of times the intensity that you're burning can impact what the smoke's doing. It can cause it to lift better. If you need to burn a little bit hotter to cause it to lift more. If you need to increase or decrease the distance between the strips that you're putting down, can impact the amount of smoke that you're putting up at any given time. And generally, you want to obtain a spot weather forecast or have a real good forecast to go off of the day you're going to burn. What's the mixing height and what's the wind direction. Moving down the list. Again,
Real
burning
quick, Shannon, where's your favorite source for weather to get that mixing height information? Do you have some?
The National Weather Service has a fire weather dashboard. I can provide some links to this if I can provide some links and you can kind of disseminate it to folks.
Yeah.
I have all those kind of listed on a sheet, but the National Weather Service fire weather dashboard is the best, and it kind of gives you that fire weather forecast of all this stuff for temperature, humidity, mixing height, wind direction, wind gusts. It's all listed right there in one little tight spot.
Great. I just put a link in the chat for people who want to poke around and see that. Thanks.
Yep. And one thing to realize is there's different weather service offices. So if you're in the upper shore, you may be dealing with Mount Holly. If you were in Southern Maryland or the rest of the state, you're kind of out of the Sterling office, and lower shore, you're in the Wakefield. So each one of those little offices have their own fire weather dashboard. That way you're getting a local forecast. Yep. Moving on down, burn conditions, firing conditions, and pre-burn factors. We want to know what is your control line construction method. Do you have something that's disked? Have you pushed a line with a dozer, scraping off the material around it to create a barrier? Basically, what are you using for your fire line? On this one, he has a 20-foot mowed grass line down to 3 inches, so it's mowed really tight to the ground. And then they're using UTVs with suppression units to put down a wet line to burn off of. So that's what he's got. Test fire location and procedures. Before you start each burn, once everybody's briefed and you're kind of moving forward with the burn, you want to have a test fire. The location of that is important because you want it to be a test fire and not light on the wrong side and create a big head fire. So basically, you're lighting that. We want to know your procedures. You're lighting that on the downwind side of the burn, inside of the control line. When you light it, you're going to be looking to see what the smoke's doing. If it's following, what you expect it to do from the forecast. What is the fire behavior doing? Is it doing what you would expect? Is it going to meet the objectives of the burn? And if everything looks good with the burn, you can kind of move forward. Or if you light the test burn, and after 5 or 10 minutes or so, you pick up a spot fire, that's a good indication that, you might not be the right day, that something that you've looked at is wrong. Firing methods. For for most folks, this will be drip torches. You know, with this day and age, firing methods are, you know, there's a lot of different types now. We do a lot on more of the larger complex burns within the state, through use of our cooperators. We do some ignitions with drones and dropping spheres that kind of fall into the burn and just kind of catch fire, and will create little checkerboard fires throughout the interior of the burn. And then you need to use drip torches around the edge. So there's a lot of different types of firing methods. The procedure and sequence we're looking for there is where you're going to start burning, what type of firing procedure are you using? Are you just going to let the fire back completely across the burn? Or are you going to let it back a little bit and then use a head fire to burn into it with a strip head type of a burn? Or is the shape and intensity of fire and everything that you're looking for justified like a ring burn, and you'll just pull the perimeter all the way around and then let it pull into the interior? So we want to know what your plan is from that. With the drone operations, we added this. We have had a few times where you start to plan complex burns and the drones become integral in the planning of it and the tactics of doing it. But what happens if you're have a large burn planned and you get in the middle of it and then the drone goes down? Do you have resources, personnel and equipment that you can call in to kind of finish the burn and get it done safely, as opposed to just kind of, you know, just being in the middle of it and then lose that ability to get fire in the interior of the burn? Fire behavior calculations. You know, we've gone to this requiring, you know, the fire behavior calculations run through a program, Behave Plus. I can give some links to some YouTube videos that kind of walk through Behave a little bit. And WCG again has a course on Behave. I recommend, you know, getting formal education on fire behavior calculations, or working with a Forest Service person to help you determine what that is. But you know, essentially through all those parameters, the temperature, humidity, wind speed, and things like that, you know, what are we expecting in the way of fire behavior? So we're looking for the head fire, you know, the chains per hour, which could also be correlated to feet per minute. But you know, what is the preferred that we're looking for by fire behavior out of our weather calculations? And then what are the flame lengths? So the head fire, of course, would be, you know, lighting the fire and let it burn with the wind, getting a head fire and burning towards what hopefully you've already burned out. And then we have also the backing fire behavior prediction. So if you was to light on the downwind side of the burn, if you just let the fire back into the inside of the burn, that's going to be your backing fire. And you can see it's usually significant less than the head fire from the calculations. And then what's the probability of ignition? So if you have a firebrand that comes out of the prescribed burn and lands on the green side of the burn, what's the probability that firebrand will cause a spot fire? And again, these are all kind of calculations that get run through you know, accepted kind of scientific methods. And this Behave program will do all this in a pretty automated way, so long as you know the inputs to put in for each one of these based off of the fuel type that you're burning. And you can see here on this one, they ran the fire behavior for the grass, the GR5 for the fields that they're burning. And he also ran it for the timber litter for the adjacent fuel. So if he was to get a spot fire or slop over into the green side, he's done some calculations on what you can expect out of that fuel type. Estimated burn duration, you know, how long is it going to take to burn? When do you plan to stop? When do you plan to finish? What time of year are you looking to burn? And more information prescribed burn hazard signs. So if you do have something that is close by that is smoke sensitive or highly traffic area, a road that you're getting a lot of traffic on, um, even if your wind direction doesn't really, you don't anticipate it impacting that road, you may get a wind shift that does put smoke on the road, at least for some portion. So you want to have the signs on the road to help with that. And then also for the people that are driving by and seeing smoke, it lets them know that there's a prescribed burn being conducted there, and I don't want to call 911, because without the signage, the 911 centers would just get inundated with phone calls of folks turning in a burn that is in fact a prescribed burn. Equipment required on site. What do you plan to have on site the day of the burn? And these are all drop down boxes. We just kind of listed the things that people typically have a requirement for, and the quantity, and then the source of where they're coming from. Other equipment, here they have listed personal protective equipment for all personnel. So they want all personnel on the fire ground to have Nomex, hard hat, boots, gloves, and goggles. So control procedures. Basically, what are you going to do to keep the fire under control? What's your planning for that? What's the procedures? Here he's adjusting the distance between the spacing of the ignitions to keep the flame lengths less than 20 feet to reduce the chance of a slop over or spot fire. And then he's anything that doesn't burn or creates a bit of a green island within 20 feet of the perimeter, he wants that burned out so that it's good black from the edge of the burn in at least to a minimum of 20 feet, and then monitoring and holding. Mop up procedures. This is after you've burned, and the fire is either in a smoldering or presumed out stage. What procedures are you going to do to mop up there? How are you going to leave the burn? Are you going to mop up 10 feet in? Are you going to mop up 30 feet in, or are you going to do 100% mop up? You may require that depending on where it is and what the circumstances are. Special precautions. These, with burns, if there's something inside of the burn perimeter that you're looking to protect, you would list it there. Maybe there was telephone poles around the exterior of the burn that special precaution you might clear around them, or have somebody there by them as they're burning. Contingency plan. Here we're looking that you just have a basic plan for if the fire does spot or slop and you're dealing with a wildfire, what is your contingency planning for that? Do you have control lines outside of the burn that you're going to use? Where are your contingency resources? What are they? Who are you going to call to get these contingency resources? This could be as basic as the Forest Service personnel name and number, or 911. It just depends on who you're burning for, and things like that. But basically, we just want to know that you have a plan and you have resources, that if the fire does become out of control, that you have means of catching it. Staffing the burn post burn. So larger areas. Some of these burns we get are larger areas where they're burning understory, and you may finish at the end of the day and the fire's contained, but it's still smoldering and burning, and at some point you may need to leave that burn at least for the evening to come back for the morning. And here we want to know, what is your staffing plan for that? Medical plan. We just wanted to have some things in here that these are for you to fill in hazards that exist. Remember, safety is our number one importance on any burn. The safety of the personnel there, and then the safety of folks around the burn. So, it's the old adage: if it's predictable, it's preventable. So we just want to identify And these are things that, I've run into on fires that, that are listed in here, just people being complacent, when they're dealing with drip torches and fuel and things like that, where they're fueling them, making sure that you're wearing your PPE, making sure that you have lights on the vehicles that are driving around, that might be in smoke. Just making sure you have a backer if you're backing things up. I've been in a lot of circumstances on burns where it gets smoky and you have UTVs kind of, colliding or, things like that. So essentially you're just, identifying the risk and then trying to mitigate it. And then smoke inhalation, if you got like the same personnel on the downwind side of the burn all day and they're eating, tons of smoke all day, you want to reduce that when possible. And then part of the med plan, where's the nearest facility if something was to happen, so where to take somebody if you did have a medical emergency. We want identified, if there was an incident to occur, a medical incident, where on the property are you going to meet medical resources to take them to that person? On a low complexity small burn, this might seem insignificant, but some of these other burns where there's multiple fields or remote areas, having this information to give to everybody so that if there's a medical emergency, they can call and they have this basic information that they can turn that into 911 very quickly. Landing zone location, this may not again be applicable on smaller burns. In most cases, if you did have a medical emergency and you call 911, the landing zone would be determined by them. Burn crew organization, we're looking, for planning purposes, who's the burn boss? Are you going to have a firing boss? Who is that? Are you going to have a holding boss, weather observer? On smaller, low complexity burns, this might be the same person for all these. They just need to be qualified in what they're doing. If it's a smaller burn and it's not that complex, the burn boss can direct the firing and holding of the crews. If things get bigger and more complex, then you need to kind of, expand that for different different folks to be able to handle those positions. And then the number of additional personnel on scene, in addition to these folks, are you required to have? Notifications. This is 24 hours out from when you're going to burn. Who are you going to let know? If you have adjacent landowners near the burn, if I lived somewhere and somebody was going to burn in the field next to me, I would want to know as a courtesy that that's happening. And it prevents a lot of times. It'll prevent folks from calling 911 thinking there's an emergency whenever it's realistically just a planned burn. So, we want to know who they are and then who's going to notify them. Other notifications, most burning, prescribed burning is kind of exempt from the requirement of a environmental health department permit under an accepted forestry agricultural premise. But I recommend kind of calling them and dialing them in on what you're doing, and that way they're not surprised if they do get a call and everybody's on the same page. Each county's a little different in their exemptions. Within Maryland, some of the more heavily populated counties, there may be other things you need to do with them to be able to conduct a burn. Fire manager, for southern and eastern region, that would be me, essentially letting me know that you're planning to burn, and that way I can kind of, if I knew of a special weather statement or a red flag warning or something that was coming up and you told me you were going to burn the next day, at that point you can at least have that conversation with me of the conditions. Land unit manager, that would be the person that manages that particular forest, park, or wildlife management area. The ESA, again, most cases that's going to be Jason Harrison. Notifications the day of the burn. Right before you burn, you want to make sure that you call the 911 center using the non-emergency number, to call them and dial them in that you're burning. That way, when people start calling in, they're aware of it, and they're not sending fire department resources out there. And it gives them, they'll take your information so that they can then call you if they have any questions. The
Shannon,
Forest Service project. Yep.
oh, sorry to interrupt. I thought you were done with this section, but I'll just ask it now. We had a
Yep.
few questions about whether you're required. How much of these are required notifications versus best practices? Could you elaborate on that piece?
So planning, whatever we're putting in the burn plan, I would say is required at that point. But the landowners, for example, like what determines somebody be adjacent? If they're across the street from the burn, are they adjacent? Or are you in the middle of a big farm and they just happen to live next door to a big farm? So there's a little bit of gray area there, but essentially this part could be somewhat not a legal requirement, but something that I would recommend or highly recommend folks doing. And again, if you look at the rules on notifications, the environmental health department, if you are indeed exempt, you technically don't have to let them know. But I just find it good practice to do that notification.
Right.
And then myself, out of courtesy, I want to know what prescribed burns are happening in the region that I have responsibility for.
Mhm. And somebody else asked, do you have any recommended distance for neighbor notifications? And I would guess maybe this somewhat depends on prevailing winds, but do you go more further than just adjacent sometimes?
Yeah, as you can see with the burn plan and with planning burning, it's very complex, and not one answer will answer everything. But depending on the size, the fuel type, the amount of time you expect it to burn and smoke, if it's a field in a warm season grass where after a few hours you're going to be complete, you can be pretty tight with those notifications. If it's something that could smoke for 2 or 3 days, and there's always the potential to get an inversion or something that smokes out nearby, then you may want to broaden that. But generally, if there's a possibility for somebody to get affected by fire or smoke, I think notifying them is the way to go.
Great, thanks.
Yep. And then attachments, these are just things that we prefer to be part of the plan, an overview map, a specific burn unit map. None of these are legal requirements. They're just, I would require, some sort of a map to tell me where you're burning at. Cause I know like a landowner may not have the software that we have to create in-depth maps, and it may not be necessary for a lower complexity burn. But generally we want some way to convey to us where you're burning. And then a smoked impact map, the 1 mile and the 5 mile. A lot of people used to put the 1 mile and the 5 mile on the same map, but really I need to see what's in that 1 mile. So we prefer to have 2 different maps for that. Contingency maps optional if you have a really complex burn. Pre-identifying roads that are outside of the burn area on the property that you're burning are probably wise to identify different fuel types where you might catch a fire if it does get out of control. The more planning that goes into it, the more you set yourself up for success. The pre-ignition go no go checklist. I'll scroll down to that in a little bit, but that should be part of every burn plan. The pre-ignition briefing checklist, I'll scroll down to that, but it's just part of this burn plan package. And then prescribed burn evaluation, again, further down. And then weather documentation sheet. So I'll just scroll down through this stuff. So
Shannon, on some of those
yep.
maps that you described, the smoke impact maps and others,
Yep.
Are they pretty standard? Like you mentioned, some people might not have the GIS software to do this. If they have some basic knowledge, like for example, we have some knowledge of using GIS. So what are your preferred tools to create these radius maps? Are there some models that are pretty easily available to create those maps?
I'd say we're completely flexible. I mean, realizing that a low complexity burn where a landowner's, doing something, if they can give some printout of a Google map, and then with a scale, with a marker, draw a mile around that burn area. We don't need professional detail on everything that's being turned in. But if you're burning, 150 acres of hillside, or in the middle of a big block of woods on the shore, the more complex it is, the more I need to look at stuff and see, what's going to be affected.
Gotcha. And so you're not taking into account wind or plumes or anything. It's just more a map showing the 1 mile radius.
Yeah, I mean, I will look at, when I go through the burn plan and review it, I'll look at the wind direction and wind speed that you have listed in your parameters. And then I'll look at that 1 mile and see what's on that side of the burn, and that's really what I'm looking for, to make sure that what wind directions and wind speeds you've chosen will avoid those things.
Gotcha. Thanks.
The this is a prescribed burn checklist, the go no go checklist, and basically it's just some before you light the fire, it's one last chance to make sure all the boxes are checked, to make sure you're covered. Do you have an approved burn plan? All elements are met within the plan. All the smoke management, all, again, there's a lot of risk and liability in prescribed burning, and to make sure that all your T's are crossed and I's are dotted and everything's documented will go a long way in proving that you did your level best to conduct a safe and efficient burn. I'm not going to read through all these, but these are just kind of like those last minute things that you want to make sure. If you've answered yes to all of them, at that point, you're good to go and start your test fire. The briefing checklist, just something we added to this package. It just is a resource to folks that are burning, to be able to give a good briefing to the people that are helping with the burn, to be comprehensive and make sure everything's covered, and you're not getting started and wondering how you're going to talk to or communicate with people, or who's going to do what. Just a good checklist and format to use. So that's what that's for. I'm going to go over the reporting, but this is the prescribed burn evaluation form. There's a QR code here, and then there's also a link, realizing that when you're in the field, you can't click the link, of course, if you have a paper copy of the map, but you can click on the QR code. And this is an electronic version, which I'll cover in just a minute here. So just that's what this is on there for, to give you access to that. And then this last section is just documentation for you to document your burn. Before you burn, what were the weather conditions? Document the test burn, throughout the burn, the weather. And this is a good way for you to follow up and to try and improve whenever you're burning again. What were the weather conditions when I burned? What were the what went right, what went wrong, and then what was the weather when it went right and went wrong. So documentation is all that's for. It's optional. It's just there for you. Any questions before I go over the eval? I know it's hard to not just buzz through a lot of that.
That's all right. Well, thanks. This has been great. We do have a number of questions. Let me see.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've hit a few of them, but there's a few that are backed up in here. Rasharda from Akakik asked, do you have any advice? I think this is at the very beginning. Advice for quickly determining what percentage of a burn unit contains certain types of fuels or plants, and how do you come up with those estimates? Are they, how do you do that?
Through mapping. I mean, you're basically looking at the compartment. If it was 10 acres and half of it was one fuel model versus the other half, we're just looking to know, like, that particular fuel model you listed, what percentage of that burn unit is that fuel model.
Yeah.
Because again,
something of an estimate, like, because if you have shrubs scattered among a field, you'd say maybe 25% of this has shrubs in it, or make some estimates like that.
Yeah, and you need to be overall general. Like, you can't capture, if you had a 50-acre burn in the woods, you may not capture every tiny little time the fuel model changes. But if you had obvious timber understory under a part of it, and then brush or shrub for another portion of the other, you would want that captured and reflected.
Great. I think you got this QR code right here. Somebody, I think Anthony asked, what kind of follow-up of the burn is required? Is that, I think you're going to cover that here shortly. So let's put a pin in that one. Come back to
Okay.
that. He also asked, there could be some legal liability ramifications from the burn, especially if things don't go as planned. Uh, Before you answer, I do want to say we are uh, we are working with the Nature Conservancy to get an analysis, a legal analysis done to better understand prescribed fire liability in Maryland. I'm working with the Prescribed Fire Council on that, and we should have, I believe, a document written up that should go over a lot of the negligence aspects and at what point you are protected and better understand the liability. I don't know if we have an excellent understanding. I think we have a general understanding, but I think we'll have a lot more in the coming weeks. I think she's planning to get that done here in the next week or two. I'll be sure to share that with everybody when we get that. But Shannon, did you have any thoughts on legal liability issues and how to protect yourself?
I will say this as we're going through this plan.
Uh-oh, I think your audio might have popped out there. There you go. You're back.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you are a landowner on a or land manager on a small, relatively low complex burn that you have, you know, there's legal ramifications, but some of this information might seem pretty extreme or pretty in depth, or a lot of information to give for something that you're doing. But again, there is that risk and liability, and this plan is written as a basic standard from that low complexity burn to a very complex burn. So it's why all these elements are in there, and they're in there, and you need to have an understanding of them so you are protected, legally, and that you're following the burn plan and you're not just gross negligence. I know I'm out of my prescription today, but I'm a get it done kind of person. I'm going to get it done, and then if things go wrong, if that gross negligence can be proven, then or you haven't planned at all, with the burn plan. So, I mean, like you said, that you're best to get legal, the legal ramifications from somebody legal. But generally, all this planning and burn plan and education and experience requirements and is to protect everyone and to be able to grow our program responsibly.
Right. So I would say this a well documented plan and that you followed it will help to protect you in a liability situation. Although, of course, uh, we will always put that caveat, and the document we're getting put together will have that caveat. This is not official legal advice, but these are the standards that we've found in the case law. Um, but thank you for sharing that. And somebody asked it, how many times have you had controlled burns escape and spread? I know it can happen. It has happened. What's your experience with that?
And again, it does happen. It can happen. We plan as best we can. We get forecast, as best we can. We do our very level best to stay within that. Um, Fire can be as predictable as it is. It can be unpredictable. Every circumstance can't be accounted for in topography and fuels and things. So little issues will come up. You'll get a spot fire. You'll get a slop over, and it's why we have the requirement for resources and to make sure that everybody has what they need there to catch it. And sometimes, despite our best effort, I have had escapes happen. I've caught them, but sometimes you feel like you maybe got a little lucky when you caught it. And it was something usually unplanned or unforeseen, or just some circumstance. You just took a little bit too big of a bite of with your drip torch with the head fire, and just pushed harder against the line than you expected it to. It's usually circumstances like that cause a slop over or spot fire. It wasn't, we lit it slopped, spotted, and we spent the next 2 weeks trying to catch it. I haven't had any of those.
Great. One more question here. Under what conditions have you denied a submitted burn plan? Uh, Adverse impact on the environment, safety issues, ambient air impacts, or anything like that?
Um, I mean, when I read through this stuff, if I see holes, gaps, and safety issues or anything, I just kick it right back, and they have the opportunity to edit it and then kick it back to me again. If I got a burn plan for somebody that I wasn't familiar with, or I would question, do you have the training and experience needed to be a burn boss? And is the information, if it doesn't seem right, and then the person you don't know, at that point I would probably not approve a burn plan.
Great. So it sounds like you have the opportunity to do edits and to make it within compliant. And if they're working towards it, it sounds like you can usually get it approved as long as you make the things work right.
Yeah, I mean, our job is to set people up for success and to help them reach their objectives, not to try and roadblock and cause people not to get things done.
Great. Uh, Last question before I'll let you get to this issue of the follow-up burns. Kathy Thornton asked, on the weather observation sheet, could you specify what the abbreviations FDFM and PIG stand for?
FDFM is the fine dead fuel moisture. I'll just scroll back up. Right there. Fine dead fuel moisture, which is your 1 hour fuels, which are the light, flashy fuels, the surface fuels that are carrying the fire. And in most circumstances, the most important fuel that we're looking at, because that's really what's carrying the fire. The PIG is the probability of ignition. So down here, this probability of ignition is the percent chance that if a firebrand lands in a fuel, what are the chances that it will actually materialize into a spot fire.
Great. All right. I think we're ready for you to show us the post-burn stuff, or go ahead and move on. Thank you everybody for
Okay.
staying late. This has been great. Can't believe the time flies like this, Shannon. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. I try my best to not rush through it, but get through it. And this is important. This burn evaluation form. Number one, it lets us know that you burned. It lets us know where you burned. It lets us know how much you burned. And as this program grows, the Forest Service is responsible to report to the U.S. Forest Service what was burned. And as as this program grows and the benefits of this program is seen by all, we want to capture everything that was indeed burned. So, it had been paper copies and manual entry, which is pretty brutal when things are in the spring and fall when you're kind of running and gunning with burns, where this is more of an automated reporting system. It can be done by your cell phone, your tablet, your computer. It can be done in the field if you have cell phone service. It can be done back at the desk at your computer, but it gives you flexibility to be able to report that burn. So when do you want to report? When the fire's cold out. So once the fire's out, that's when you want to report your burn. So the information is basic. We're looking for the burn plan ID. That's that burn plan number. We're looking who the burn boss was, the completed date. What's the affiliation? Was it a state burn, a private lander, or other? And as you click some of these boxes, it'll expand other boxes but it's very, very straightforward. What was the ownership? Who owned the land on where the burn happened? Drop a pin where the burn was. So this is just a Google map or map base that you pan around in, and then just drop the pin on exactly where the burn was. Or if you burn multiple compartments, I would drop it in the middle of all that. Weather conditions, we want to know what the weather conditions were for your test burn. So during your test burn, what were the weather conditions? You can list those. And then that's the test burn. I think once you enter that, it expands another one to enter the conditions for the peak burning conditions. So like in the middle of the day at like 1 o'clock, if you're burning during the day, what was your weather conditions? And then as you report down, how many burn units did you complete? And then say you did 2. you'll see it has a 1 and a 2, so it expands that. So of this compartment, this is the fuel type, the consumption, the acres that I got burned, and objective complete, and that information. And then you would just move to your second one, and then report on that compartment. And then the last section, it gives you basically what we want is a shape file of the property or of the burn unit. We want the perimeter of the burn unit kind of with containing area, not a point. So basically, what was the area that you burned? And you can give it to us if you're a GIS user. You have the option to drag and drop the files associated with that burn perimeter into this. If you're in the field, or the easier way for you to do it, this box here, you can basically, all you have to do is just digitize around the area that you burned. And then when you finish it, it gives you the area. And then all this information up here is then spatially referenced and attached to that area, so that in the end we'll have spreadsheets and physical boundaries on maps that we can then account for what areas we've treated, what areas have been burned, how often were they burned, where were they burned, there's just a lot of different ways to look at the data that we're doing from all this burning and treatments and management that we're doing. And then at the end you just hit submit. So any questions?
I have a couple more. One was from Garrett Stickle. Sorry, Garrett. And he asked about touching on the ecological benefits of spring burning versus winter or fall. I could take a crack at that, but maybe you would like to as well.
Go ahead, you first.
So, generally, most of the burning really tries to focus on getting it done by April 15th. That's kind of the ecological mark where we start seeing migrating birds coming in and starting to build nests. So that's kind of a big marker for trying to get things done so you don't end up burning breeding bird nests up. That said, there has been increasing work, and not only nests of birds, but also turtles are generally dormant, they're underground. A whole lot of wildlife is still not active. And as you get later and later into spring, a lot of animals start coming out and they can get burned up in the fire. So it's a good time to minimize impacts to wildlife. Now, I will say there's also a lot of research going on, and there's almost been I would say, probably a bias towards burning only during that late winter, early springtime. But there's also been research finding that getting the burn done is possibly just as important or more important. For example, even though you may have some mortalities of, say, some turtles in a burn unit uh, conducted in the summer, the overall benefits to improving the habitat on the scale of 5 or even 10 years out can be more beneficial on a whole to the population. So even though you might lose some during that event, you can create more habitat so the populations can actually do better. And so this is also the case for turkeys and nesting turkeys. And research has found that yes, it can cause some direct mortalities, but it also can have some benefits. That said, people generally try and do in the spring, early spring, but I think there's an increasing push to not to consider also growing season burns as well. That would be summertime. As for fall, uh, again, a lot of things are then starting to go back in the ground and not as active. The disadvantage to burning in the fall is you leave a lack of vegetative cover on the landscape. So, and you're going into this winter period. And in the same way that I discourage people from mowing any grass fields in September, October, because it really takes away all that thermal cover. By burning late, you also have sort of a barren landscape and nothing will grow back until the next spring. So, I think of like tall grasses and shrubs that look really messy on the landscape in winter. I think of those as a warm blanket for wildlife. And I try to get people to think about that because a lot of times we like things to be clean, but those messy areas provide a lot of really winter cover for a whole lot of wildlife species. So that's my quick and dirty answer. Shannon, did you want to elaborate on that? Oh, you're muted, I think. Oh, we can't hear you, Shannon. Shannon, we can't hear you. Still can't. Sorry.
I'm not sure what
You're
happened.
back. You're back.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just saying I could not have done better with that answer. As I I'm more in the mechanics of burning. I wildland firefighter for my career, interagency and in-state, and that's kind of where my knowledge lies. As I work more with folks like yourself and Kyle Magic with Tall Timbers, I start to see the benefit of burning for management of different things, no matter how small they are, and you know the burning season that you're doing that in, you may not be wiping, burning 100% of the fuel off, but you're benefiting whatever that is. So if you have a late season burn or a dormant season burn, I'm looking more at the fire behavior end of it. But as far as the objectives, professionals like yourself and Kyle and folks like that is who folks should reach out to.
Great. We have a few more questions trickling in. Thanks for everybody for staying on. I think this is really helpful. Jay Green asked if would you be willing to share this this filled out completed burn plan template with me, and I could share it with everybody here, so they can kind of work from a completed burn plan template.
Yeah, I would, and just know that the parameters on this are specific to a site, and they're they're not going to be applicable everywhere in every condition. You may need a more intense fire, you may need a relatively less intense fire. It just depends. But for the entries, I see where having a plan would benefit you. But yeah, I could share this.
Cool. Janine asked if you're the neighbor to somebody who had a burn and embers jump onto your acreage and start a larger fire, who should you contact first?
So is the question the like you were burning and it jumped? Who do you call
No,
first?
it sounds like the neighbor had a burn and escaped onto your property. Who would you call having a fire on your property?
Well, you should call 911. Unless you have a good indication that that fire is getting picked up and handled by the folks that were doing the burn, which very well could be the case. Outside of that, the forestry, I would call, the Maryland Forest Service. We investigate and respond to wildfires. At that point, that's maybe what they're looking at. We would be the agency that do the investigation on that.
Yeah, and I would say this is it speaks to that importance of pre-notification. So if you've as a neighbor have gotten a call already and you know what's going on, they will probably you will know who to call, who's conducting the burn immediately, and inform them as well at the same time. So that's one of those important parts of the notification, it seems.
Yep.
Janine mentioned where she lives, any kind of fire is against the law to prevent forest fires during early spring and late fall. Janine, are you in West Virginia, or you want to share where you are? That'd be helpful. And then Anthony shared where he lives. He has no burn restrictions until May 15th. So Janine's in upstate New York. So yes, a lot of fire law will vary by state, and there's also county differences as well. So this is very much local to Maryland situation. Some of it may apply, a lot of it will apply, but the details, especially regarding legal aspects and permitting and dates, will vary. So, and yeah, as you get into colder regions, those burn dates tend to move later into the spring. So, Anthony, I'm guessing you're maybe in Western Maryland where those burn dates go a little bit later. Is that your experience, Shannon? Is there a later burn window in Western Maryland?
Yeah, green up doesn't occur until later out there for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Great. I think we got through all of our questions. I had a couple from my from Evan Griffiths, who's filling out a burn plan right now. Then maybe we can close with these couple of easy ones, hopefully. But one was, is there a maximum acreage of a field for prescribed burning? We've got some, say, a 25-acre field or 35-acre field. Is there any problem with that, or do we need to break those up into smaller burn units?
I would say the size of your burn unit would depend on what you can safely burn and hold. You know, you don't want to put more fire on the ground than you can hold and you have resources to handle. So from that aspect, the size of a burn unit with a perimeter around it is going to depend on that. And I have, there is no maximum number. Just, you know, everything I look at, each plan I look at, I try to, you know, look through the whole scenario and make sure that it can be safely done.
Great. And then how close can you burn to buildings? If you have a 20 or 80-foot disc buffer, how do you handle like proximity to buildings, or barns and structures, occupied or unoccupied?
You know, I can only speak to the Forest Service regulation side of that. Our regulations are resource protection, so they're all, you know, protecting woods and natural cover and things of that nature. The health department does have setbacks, environmental health department, on how close you can burn to buildings. And I hate to say a number because it could be different in each county. I suspect that it's probably somewhat standard at like somewhere around 200 feet. But I would recommend, you know, calling your environmental health officer and seeing what that setback is.
Great. Great. Well, with that, I think we've covered all the questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thanks for staying long. It was a great session. Thank you, Shannon, for speaking and helping to break down this process for us. I think, given the interest here, I think we're going to have a lot more prescribed burn on the ground. We'll get a lot of thank yous in the chat. And this will go up on YouTube here in a week or so after we get it cleaned up and edited. And I look forward to talking to you guys all next month for Jeff Larkin. He's going to be a great one on birds and forest management. So see y'all next month.